Hi, Kevin with New Standard. We're back at Greenwald finishing up today. You'll see as we're walking around, they're actually literally finishing up as far as doing some washing, disinfecting. Animals are coming in this afternoon, so we thought we'd take this last and final opportunity to get you a look around at the barn before we close it up. You're still going to see a bit of construction around here, materials that are going to be cleaned up, but you can ignore that. And, let's just dive right into it. For those of you who've been watching the video series, as it were, I'm basically standing in the spot where I was standing on the original video coming in along the row of stalls. You'll actually see behind me, I started here again specifically on this video for a reason to show you that, yes, we still have some stalls, but obviously we don't need nearly as many, and you'll see that in a bit. What we did throughout this conversion was, as you saw, this was actually all completely stripped out. We replaced the feed system, so we've got a new chain disc up in here. The stalls have been cleaned up, re-welded, re-bolted in place, new penning hardware and whatever for this area. So realistically, it all has been redone, even if this looks somewhat similar to what we had. This end here, we've got basically 4 rows of breeding stalls. The plan here is currently for them to be batch fed every 2 weeks. They're going to breed just over 100 animals. Now, the way we got this set up, they actually could go to a weekly flow doing 50-ish animals. They could go to 3 weeks, 4-week batch, and if they wanted, because we've got enough crates to actually do that. So this is one of those great barns where they've got options to do whatever they want as far as production style goes. Either way, we're still considered a loose housing barn, and the pigs will be spending the same amount of time in the pens. Again, we've got the space for that. We'll get to that in a second. These breeding stalls are still required, but the animals are only in here for max a week, lots of times even only 3-4 days. Because they'll put them in here, they'll get them bred, and they'll let them finish their heat. So depending on the type of genetics and the management and all the rest, how they want to handle it, lots of times that's only 3-4 days. They're actually in these stalls. And then the way they're currently planning on running, that means that for a week, week and a half, these stalls sit completely empty. So we put a chain system up here that feeds just these 4 rows of stalls for that reason, because they'll get all filled, they'll all get empty, and then they're actually going to sit empty for a little while. Now these stalls that we're coming up to, they're offset rows, still only 4 of them. They're basically in here as anything you want. Slush, cull storage, new gilts coming in someplace to hold them, whatever they may need in the future. This is also what allows us to, if he decided to change to a 3 or 4 week batch system, he'd have the stalls available to breed in here if he really wanted to. This isn't typical in one of these renovations. Again, the reason we were able to do this is because the initial size of the barn was designed to be around 1,200 sows, and their desire was to get down to a production level of only around 1,000 sows. So we had some extra space. We incorporated it in such a way that really, if he wanted to push it, he could put this barn back up to a 1,200 sow pretty quick. His farrow would just need to be tweaked to wean a little bit earlier, but he could still get the animals in here if required. So we ran a different change system for these stalls because, again, it's going to be variable. There'll be times where there is no animals in here. There might only be 2 or 3 sometimes. These ones are sitting empty. We have to be able to control that separately. Same thing with these pens over here. They've got the same reason to be in the barn as those stalls, is that we always need some, call it sick pens, call it, you got culls that you got to store before you're hauling them out of here. We always have need for these extra pens. Now, again, in this barn, it ends up that we probably have more than he needs. I can pretty much guarantee if I came back in here in a few years, there'd be some of these pens where the gates have never actually been opened. There'll be dust on the floor because they didn't need it. There'll be tools and whatnot stored on the floor. But from a production side, you can just swing back there, Quinn, and get the backwards view of the fact that is the breeding stalls, 4 rows there. Once they're finished their heat in those stalls, they're going to move them down, and I guess we might as well actually walk the way the animals would walk. You're going to move them down here and make a choice depending on their age, their parity, their size. They're either going to go over to this other room. There's 2 large pens there. There's 1 large pen here. We'll go see real quick. They're set up a little differently to each pen. There's basically the same amount of feed stations, but there's smaller, middle, and larger pens as far as square footage is, so that we can put the same amount of animals, but a lot different amount of square footage. So the gilts we're only going to give the 18, 19 square feet to. Middle P1 or sorry 2, 3, 4, whatever. They're up to 22, and we've actually got all the way up to 24 for the bigger animals, the P3, 4s, and higher. That's what's actually in this room. So we'll just take a quick walk because they're washing on the other side there. Don't want to jump in on them. But if those animals were some of the larger pigs that are in the production, they move down here. We've given them a couple of choices. Running them straight ahead basically puts them out directly into the group. Most people don't choose to do that for a multitude of reasons. Our preference, our recommendation, you would take this route. This is typically the separation pen. Again, we'll come back to the purpose of that under normal operation, but when filling the pen each time, you got to envision that this pen it's a large dynamic pen. Maybe come get a shot of that, Quinn, and you can see that this whole area is now one pen, just with some lower dividers in the majority area, taller penning again just by the feed stations and the edge here. That pen's going to hold, I think we have it 250 plus animals. So when he goes to farrow, he'll be taking some from here, some from each pen, empty them out. Now, same thing with the breeding, he'll be dividing them up into one of these 3 pens. So he might have somewhere up to 50, 60 animals or better that'll be coming into one of these pens. Could be as low as 20 or 30, depending on where production is that week. Brings them into this area just as a holding. We can then come into this pen here that normally or will be full of pigs, and we've got some gates in place here. And this will be done in the morning when everybody's laying around. They've pretty much ate already. There isn't too much action. So we've got these gates here, and I can pull this around and actually put it all the way to that post there. Again, just a short gate because I'm not really chasing pigs around. I'm just kind of preventing them from walking somewhere. I can do the same there. So now this area is open. That gate can be opened. And I've got a gate there that allows me to basically block off a couple of feed stations. So 4 of the feed stations stay available for the main group, all the pigs that are already in here and doing their thing. This is only blocked off long enough to move those animals that I was talking about putting in that pen. We can walk them through here, and now they're going to come into this area where they alone have access to these 2 feed stations. Now, they've been trained, they know how to use this. That's not the reason we're penning it off. It's just to keep them separated from the main group until they come through, give them access to these feed stations. They'll come in, they'll eat their portion, and then they'll leave. And when they come out one by one, they've got a full belly, being introduced to the group very slowly that way rather than as a big cluster. The reason we do that, all this is intended to make sure it flows smoothly, make sure there's no aggression, all that stuff. If you just release those pigs into the pen, a lot of people assume that you're going to have a pile of fighting. They're not necessarily wrong, except they're wrong in their assumption of why. It's not that the pigs coming in are fighting with the pigs that are already in here. They don't care. They're comfortable. It's that new group is kind of jostling for a position and figuring out where they can be, where they're going to fit in, what's their spot physically and in the hierarchy of the social herd. The other thing we've actually seen is when these animals are in loose housing, they get to very much enjoy this. And if you let them just out, they'll, after being in a farrowing crate for a few weeks and now a breeding stall for a few days or a week, that's 4 to 5 weeks that they've actually been in a stall. They get open into this pen and they go for a run. They love the freedom again, and they're gone and they run all the way to the end and they end up running into each other, doing things and hurting themselves. So we're just trying to prevent that. So the injuries to the animals and the aggression amongst them is all why we want to do this. It's still for their welfare that we're doing it. Okay, so for bringing new animals into the system after the initial fill, that's always different, but the replacement gilts that are coming in, they'll actually be born, raised in this barn, never leave. There's a weaning room just on the other side of this wall where they'll keep them for the first bit, then move them out into one of these pens here to finish developing them. And then when we're getting ready to start training them, we'll get out into this area. Now, when we want to start training them is based on their age and when we want to breed them, and we got to work backwards in groups of 3 weeks. Pigs like to work in threes, and therefore we work around that as well. What we'll do is we'll bring
a group of pigs in here into this pre-training, self-training pen, whatever you want to call it. What it consists of is it's essentially one big pen divided in half with that wall, and then these two training units. We'll get to those in a second. But on this side specifically, we have feed and only dry feed. On that side, we've got water nipples, but no feed. Now, we're never preventing them from accessing either one. We're just giving them an incentive to move back and forth between these sides of the pens. Because when we first move them in here, what we'll do is we'll actually pin this gate all the way open, that it's just a straight through tunnel. They can go back and forth through that as they want. And this unit over here, this unit actually has the finger style gates, which would be like the entrance of a feed station. These as well would basically be pinned open with these brackets, essentially is how that's done. This one needs to be loosened off a little bit, but that would pin it open that they could go back and forth as they want. So we'll start with that, give them a couple of days to get comfortable with that, and then we start training them, letting them train themselves, really. That's why it can be called self-training. What we'll do is we'll actually let this gate back a bit like this, that now as they're coming through, they just have to get used to feeling that pressure and this wheel rolling past them as they go. That one, same idea. You can slowly close it off. We'll go over there in a second. We can get to the point as well by the end of that 3 weeks of training where it doesn't lock, and it doesn't even fully close, but they have to learn to get their nose into here, push this one aside, then they'll feel a roller wheel on one side, feel this roller wheel on the other side, and they get used to walking through that, opening it and operating on their own to get to feed. To get back out of here, to get to water, exit, then they'd access this solid gate, which again, when we start with it wide open, it's just a tunnel. But over time, as we adjust this bumper and bracket back, we could just every day move it back a little bit to the point where they don't even realize they've learned how to operate our gates. You can stay here with the camera. I'm just going to hop over. Once they've had their 3 weeks there, that they're comfortable with the gates, we'll move them into this, which is actually the training pen. Now, again, this training, it's what scares a lot of people in a system like this. With this type of a design, the training is more about time than it is about work. There's not really a lot of labor involved. Not that dissimilar from an auto sort finisher where you don't have to go and push every pig through there to learn how to use the scale. You just got to give them time and slowly operate the gates. This is very much the same idea, that now when we put them in this pen with a true station to eat from rather than just an open feeder, we can still pin this gate partway open. This is a real feed station like they'll access for the rest of their life. They'll come in here, eat, and exit with a gate that they've already learned how to use. We've got a gate on the end there that just allows us to basically crowd up the animals on that side, and as they exit from eating, they're not necessarily mingling with the ones that still have to eat. So for the first couple of days, you might end up having to come in here and push an animal, and by push I mean walk her up there, convince her that yes, now is our time to get in there and stop and eat. After doing that, you're really giving them the rest of the 3 weeks to just get comfortable in here, comfortable with the idea that they can get up, go eat when they want, do what they want, and operate and get very, very at ease with that system with never having to fight with too many animals, and they're all the same age, size, so it works out well. They'll finish off in here that 3 weeks, then we can send them over to get bred. Now, something that a lot of guys are doing as well is taking them from the pre-training or self-training here, putting them off into a stall for 3 weeks and breeding them then, and then bringing them over here when they're actually pregnant already. And the reasoning for that is if you put them in a stall over there and crate break them, what you're kind of doing is twofold. You're letting them get a little bit bigger, so they're stronger and bigger to be able to operate these gates and be comfortable in the group setting. But also, you're teaching them to stand inside this box to eat, which is very similar to a stall in that way. So it kind of takes a little bit out of that training part of it, right? Or it's another tool in the training toolkit. So that's how we get them used to using the system. Now, whether you put them over there and then here or here, then there, it's kind of irrelevant. It comes down to management, comes down to genetics, what they want to do. Regardless, once they're through these steps, they're trained, they know how to use this feed station, and they're pregnant. They're ready to go out in a group. That's when they would go out into this next group down here. The farther group is actually for let's talk about the middle-sized animals. But they'd be introduced into that group, and at that point, they're off to the races, going to spend the rest of their life cycle and their gestation periods going through a pen like that, which will jump back over to the other side, and will give you an idea of what that would look like on a daily basis.
Okay, so now we want to basically cover the daily life, or the life in a day of a sow. Let's start with what's important to her. Time to eat. So how this all works, this little button here is basically the RFID, radio frequency identification tag. That's going to be mounted inside, a male part of the tag will be here. This is just on the inside of the right hand ear. A nice little piercing, and she gets to be real cool as long as she has one of these things still in her ear. Everything is tied to this. Sounds scary. What if she loses it? Well, if she loses it, the great thing is everything is also backed up in the software. I can put a new one of these on, tie all that information back to her. When I say everything's tied to this, I mean she doesn't eat unless she has one of these, and we don't get all the data we need for proper management without one of these. Lost tags can and do happen. We'll deal with that in a second. The loss rate is really only about 1%, but it does have to be dealt with, and I'll show you as we walk through here how that happens. So we already showed you how they get trained to know how to use these feed stations. So when she wants to eat and she walks up here, she'll nose this gate open and then basically just push right past this one. Okay, and I'm not doing that yet just because I want to make sure I also show you there's a sensor here that tells when this inside gate opens. Now once I open that gate, you watch this pin here, it drops down. That's locked that gate, prevented anybody else from coming in and disturb her. This is going to stay locked for 45 seconds to give her time to get her tag up to the front here and be identified. And then if she's supposed to, she will get feed. So when her tag comes in, you can see we dosed a bit of water over here, and this auger did a full rotation. What that's going to do is drop an X amount of feed. We're going to not tell the system how much that is. We have to actually measure and then tell the system what's really happening based on the density of feed. Typically, it's between 85 and 100 grams. The reason for that is, if you saw that cup on there, I'll get you back here real quick, Quinn. The reason for the cup is that no matter what they do shaking this, they can never get another kernel of feed to fall down. This is very key that we never give the animals feed for doing something bad. So they'll never get trained or learn how to bang around on this thing and get extra feed like lots of times they'll do on a stall system. They'll smash the side and realize one kernel of feed falls down out of that drop. They'll do that all day till the drop is empty, breaking your equipment. That's not going to happen in the system. That's why that cup is there, not just an open-ended auger. We do meter small bits at a time to make sure that as long as her tag stays in there, she's going to get given her full allotment. You get to pick that 2-3 kgs a day, whatever it is. And it's going to turn that auger enough times to give her that amount of feed, along with a mix of water to give her the proper mixture there. Give her everything she wants. If she chooses to leave early, it'll leave some feed behind. She can come back and get it later in the day if she so chooses. Majority of animals, obviously, they come in here, they stay until no more feed comes down. This pin is still down because it's still giving that animal, the tag I put in there, time to eat, even though her tag's not in there. There's a certain amount of time that she has to kind of get curious, nose around, put her head back in, she'll get her second portion. But after she's either finished eating and left and the system sees, hey, I haven't seen a tag in this long, it will do the same thing as at the end. If she's dosed all her feed, it'll give her a certain amount of time to finish that up. And if she chooses not to leave, either way, this system, I'm just going to force it to do it with this button here, but the system will basically pull this pin back up, unlock this gate, let the next animal in. So that's either to let the next animal in because that girl's already gone and on her own, or she's done eating and she's supposed to leave. So if an animal walks in here, then she's already had her full portion. She's eaten for the day. Tag goes in there and it goes, hey, you've had yours. It'll give her 30 seconds. And we choose those times. The 30 seconds is what we go with. to leave. If she chooses not to, it opens this up and forces her out. So we can't have a sow occupy any one of these feeding stations for more time than she's really allotted for in a day. We're never going to block this off. Some systems will have an antenna here that'll say, hey, I'm not even unlocking this gate and letting you in. Well, that animal that's eaten will still stay here for hours on end protecting it, which is basically wasting this feed space. So we do a little different than that. We let her in, go ahead, try it. You're not getting anything. The next one forces her out, and that bad behavior gets trained out of her real quick. There's no reward. There's no reason to get in there and get picked on from behind where she can't protect herself. So that's how we can keep animals flowing through here. We make sure that animals that are done eating leave. One way or the other, either by choice or by force. Not a fight, but no animal is going to stand there and try to protect this area when they can't turn around and use their face, their mouth, to protect themselves. Their rear end, their soft side is exposed. Pretty weak animal can move a pretty strong animal out of there real quick because of that. They all learn that. So I've never seen an animal fighting to stay in there when it's actually her time to leave. If she's fighting to stay in there, there's something else wrong, programming wise, whatever, but on a normal operation, they don't want to occupy that space. They're full. We drop that feed down slow enough that they actually get the feeling of satiety before they have to leave. They have no reason to stay there and occupy that space, so we keep them moving that way. So this gate here on the exit, again, not even a spring on this one. It either gets pushed forward by a sow exiting one of those feed stations or pushed back open by the one wanting to leave here. The reason that door is there is just ones coming from that cannot get their head and interfere with the one eating in any feed station in front of them. It is a private protected area during their entire feeding cycle. Come walking along this alley, question I get lots of times is, why so narrow? Why this corner? Trust me, they'll fit. You can argue with me, but you'd be wrong. They get through here, and the reason we can't have it open is if we give them that extra space to try to turn around, they're going to try. And that will mean you'll end up with head-to-head animals, backwards animals. We don't want that. So we make sure these corners, everywhere we go, is kept to the same width. It's always forward. First thing they hit along this exit is the sow weir. This is a fairly recent addition to the NEAT system. When I say fairly recent, I think it's a good 3-4 years already that we've had it. But basically, this doesn't control anything. It's a data collector. There's another antenna right here. So as they come walking along, it identifies each animal and obviously pulls a weight as she goes across. Collects that data and then can spit it out to the manager and give them attentions on whether animals are growing too fast, i.e. might be getting fat, not growing fast enough, i.e. might not be in pain, maybe need their diet up, other health issues, whatever it might be. Weight management and conditioning the sows is very important for production. Anybody knows that. That's a tool nobody else other than NEAT can offer. Okay? And that's key in that you need this system, you need this large group to be able to do this. We collect that data, we give it to the farmers, it's their info, they do with it as they need. But that is a huge management tool that only this system can offer you. The next thing they come through is what we call the central separation. Central because it's central to a pile of feed stations. It's not just a separator on the exit of one feed station. This allows us these large groups. At this point, they can be painted one of 3 colors. Again, another antenna behind you that identifies who's here. It can be painted one of 3 colors, or this is where I was talking about the potential that someone had lost a tag. So let's say an animal did lose a tag. As you saw, because we don't lock out the entrance, she can get into a feed station. She won't get fed because she won't get identified. She'll get pushed through. She's not just going to loop around all day going hungry. First time she goes to eat and doesn't get fed, she gets to this point. If this antenna doesn't see a tag, but it does see this gate move, it says, hey, there's an animal moving here, but no tag. It can instantly pull over the separation gate, paint her whatever color you want as well, pop her off into the separation. You come in the morning and you'll have an attention on your dashboard and your software that says there's been an ID check, an animal that lost its tag. You come out here, we've been smart enough ahead of time, we put on our left ear, we put her actual sow number. Sow 1234 doesn't have a tag in her right ear. I take a new tag, put that on the back of it, scan her in and tie all her info back to the new tag, put her back in the group, and she's good to go. Nothing lost, nothing harmed. This gate does stay closed normally, so sows cannot return back to the front of the feed station after they've eaten. Under normal, they had exit straight out into the group. If for any reason we want to separate them, that's the point where that antenna would say, hey, that's who's coming, I'm going to separate them, throws them out into that collection area. That could be for giving them different kinds of vaccination shots, specific attentions that you notice something on an animal, time to go to farrowing, any of those reasons that you might have. You can paint them, throw them out in that group. I call that, in this system, that's we bring the animals to you. You don't have to go to them, right? We know they're going to want to come and eat. So why not use that on a daily basis and bring them out where I can manage them for whatever reason you have, rather than you having to walk this big group and find that individual animal. But again, sticking with normal, as they come out of here, first thing they've got is an area, this is why and where we've had these new slats that we've talked about in some of those videos. Once they're coming out of here, they've got a full belly. They need to go to the bathroom. They're going to get access to some water if they want to top off on water. More of a dunging area, so it's fully slatted. And they're going to come pay attention to our friend hidden behind here. The guy hidden behind here is a guy. He's the only one that they can see. Unfortunately for him, the only place he gets to see any animals is through that hole. So they'll come over here and they'll spend a bit of time nose-to-nose contact with that boar. This antenna, again, all important. This tag tells us who's doing what. We can learn how often, what time of day, and how long each animal comes and pays attention to this boar. So when she's coming into heat, not when she's in heat, when she's coming into heat, we can already tell the system will flag you. We can paint you blue on the head if you just want to have a visual walk around and check if she's in heat. You can have her separated the next time she comes out and get management tools. It's up to you. A lot of guys will just paint them on the head, put them out in the group. These animals are so calm, they'll come out, double check, yeah, she's in heat. They'll breed her right here in the pen. Won't even take her out. That's where guys ask, how do you put them in stalls, finish their heat? No, what about preg check? This is my preg check. This is rated to be 99.9% effective because in life, nothing is 100%. But in this pen, in that pen, I'm willing to bet it's 100%. We lose that 0.1% back in the gilts. Where there's a couple of them, still those teenage girls that, they're a little wacky at hormonally, they're not sure what they're doing. You might miss a few there. You're not going to miss any that are repeating in this pen. If they come open and into heat, the system's going to fly. It's just nature. You can't argue it. So, now what does she do for the rest of her day? She spent about 15, 20 minutes max getting through there and getting fed. She spent a few minutes at the boar. Let's say she's used half hours a day. She's got 23 and a half left. What to do? Well, it's pretty simple. With a full belly, we only have one desire. Lay down, sleep it off. You know, you've had your big turkey dinner, time to do that. These are the areas we provide for that. We call them laying nests for a reason. This is where they go to lay down. In these large groups, they're going to form smaller, familial 7 to 10 animals that'll basically hang out together, make their own, everyone would say herd, but I think it's technically a sounder. They'll want to spend time together. They know their social hierarchy within that group. They feel protected within that group. They can kind of walk with their friends and feel a little tough that nobody else is going to get them because they're not truly alone. They'll come here and they'll start to lay down against these side walls that are solid. They feel protected when their back is here. They put their belly out with their feet and their head that way. That way, they can very much relax mentally, knowing that no one can attack them from behind. They are still always by nature looking out for predators. So they'll scatter themselves in here or lay themselves in here in their little familial units, either stacked along this way or some along the back, and whatever it is, when you come in here later, this area in traffic and dunning and weather area, that's the high dry lane area. You'll see pigs on both sides with a couple of them wandering down the center here. And yes, you'll even see the occasional pig that spills out. It's not like they have exact lanes here and park themselves perfectly. The walk I'm taking here is not only to show you that we've just got pen after pen, you can probably see that already. It's to give you a sense of how big this pen really is. And that's for a reason. We want to get minimum of 100 animals into a pen. That gets us to the point where it becomes a daily thing for a pig to run into a new pig because studies have shown, they can't remember more than 100 different pigs, right? That's obviously a give or take, but that's the number. Say if you're over 100, you can safely assume that every time a pig moves around in here, they're running across a new one. So it becomes a way of life. It's not worth picking a fight with every new one you run across if every day you're running across a new one. That brings the aggression down. People have a lot of concerns about that. Animals out into the big pen for aggression. It's actually, the bigger the pen, the less aggression you have. So they can choose any one of these areas they go for a walk. I posed a question back there, what she's going to do with her 23 and a half hours. She's going to wander a bit. She's going to lay down. She might even get up here once or twice to go for another drink. But one thing that they tend to not do is do that whole walk that I just did, come around this side, and then walk all the way back and try to annoy somebody who's still trying to eat. In a lot of other people's designs, you don't have this large group setting. You'll have maybe one of those things sit in a pen and literally cut off somewhere here, okay? Cut this pen into 6. They'll give them the same space, but cut this pen into 6. And all they can do then is let them in one of two ways. Either in the really bad designs, they make them back out of that thing. In the half-decent designs, they can still go forward, but then they're 7.5 feet away from the exit to the entrance. They can just go all day, annoying the ones that are still trying to eat. We've made them walk a few hundred feet. We've incentivized them. Why would they do that walk if there's no feed waiting for them? There's no reason to. Even if they had the intention when they got out of there, they start trotting. By the time they get through all this traffic, hey, you know what? I'm just going to lay down. We take it out of them, and we make sure that this area over here is actually safe for the animals that still need to eat. Makes it an efficient system, makes it an aggression-free system. But that's our system. That is how this works. There's a whole lot of other things in behind the scenes here that we've incorporated into this type of design, basically to lessen the aggression, to do better for animal welfare. Our goal is obviously to take care of the animals. That's the goal of the producer. This machine really, on paper, has one purpose: feed the animal. But with the setup, the system as it is, we can do a whole lot more as far as production, added value, with weight, with separation, with heat management. We can give you a lot of data through this system as well, not just feed animals. Because guess what? A pail dumping feed on the floor does that as well. We're not just sticking on feeding this animal. We're making sure that we actually take care of this animal and get you the information you need to do that as well. So that's Greenwald. That's the layout. To get off my soapbox a little bit there. I think we've pretty much covered how that all works. Hope you guys have enjoyed this journey. I've certainly enjoyed sharing it with you. If any of you have any questions, feel free to contact us. We can certainly go into more detail on any of the things that you may be curious about. Thanks for watching.